Mm. Good morning, friends. Good morning, patriots. Good morning, citizens. How are we? Beautiful day outside, beautiful weather. Lots to discuss, lots to speak with you about this morning. But please, before, as we always do, as I always encourage you, please don't forget, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, also hit that subscription button and the bell, and you'll be reminded of future broadcasts on the Gran Torino. Please, if you could, please consider leaving your thoughts, comments, and witticisms in the comments section down below. We do love to read through them. Big shout out and a continued thank you to all those supporting the platform. Links in the description box how you may do so. Don't forget our PO Box 13179 at Wicklow if you're of an inclination. And also consider becoming a member of the Grandstream and clicking on the join button. And again, a big thank you for your continued support and use of the Gran Torino website, World Wide Web, grandtorino.ie. And as we always do, a big shout out to the friends of the show. The where is it there? The Little Farmer, World Wide Web, thelittle.farmer.ie. We love our enzymes so much, we keep them alive. Wheatgrass and barley grass shots, mighty shots. Small wonder they're so good. 1 wheatgrass shot is equivalent to 1 kilogram of your leafy green veg. Barley grass juice are full of antioxidants. Just shake and shoot. Don't forget to enter in your your GT code and your discount code over there on the website as well. And a big shout out and a thank you from the Little Farmer themselves, and they appreciate your support. Okay, where to begin? Well, obviously, listen to the interview. I caught it this morning, thanks to Éire over on BitChute. I catch up with the following. I do encourage you to go over there to keep up with your daily news brief. If you want to cut through the plethora of advertisements and cut to the chase, get straight to Éire on his Telegram channel and also on his BitChute channel. Getting it done. And an important voice that's sadly missed over here on YouTube. And he would be doing absolutely phenomenal work over here, or they would be doing absolutely phenomenal work over here if they were still on YouTube. But hopefully, Éire, there will be some redress, and we might indeed see the return of Éire on the YouTube platform someday in the future. Good morning to you, Millie Carlin, John Doyle, Richard McKevitt, John Paul Williams, Alice Clack, John Cena in the house, Dave Lusbo, good morning to you, great to see you there. Francis B, Richard McKevitt, Metal Kelp D, also in the house. Kate McKay just joining us, and the inevitable, the one and only Rogue Z. Good morning, young man. Great to see you here in attendance. And of course, my good friend, the one and only Michael John Dennis. Continued best luck in your search for employment. Michael, keep up the good work. It'll come, it'll happen. Keep at it. Lord Funkusa says, I'm Welsh and I support GT. On second thought, that may not be an endorsement given how we're going. Stick with me, Lord Funkusius. Stick with me. Good morning to you, Maureen. Great to see you in the house. Okay, obviously, people want to get some reflection on last night's interview. My initial reaction, I was probably shouting at the radio like you, because there were some very important points that Niall missed, obviously. And I want to throw a link out this morning, because I want to invite you to come on and have your say as well in reply. I know there was some phone calls in afterward on Niall's show saying that if it hadn't have been media, none of this would have come to light. That's fairly enough, but there's enough concerned parents to have brought the matter to a head and speaking about it. And also it was mentioned in various letters that were being spoken. I have a letter here that I will read out shortly that was sent to the National Party's website. They got it. But I will read it out. And I want to touch in on queer theory as well. There's an article here that I have, and I will be discussing it with my good friend, Dr. Bruce Scott. I forwarded on to Bruce the interview from last night. Some of my earlier thoughts are straight away is that children are not the property of their parents. I mean, that was quite an out there sort of posit to throw out there, and it wasn't picked up by Niall. I thought Niall did, again, 50-50 with Niall. And I say that because I also say that the state, his radio station has received state funding to stay afloat. And while I see that as a nefarious nature, that the state will have leverage over you on how you conduct yourself on the radio show what you are and are not allowed to say. I did think he brought up some of our concerns in regards to, and I see the same video articles that was played here on this station time and time again, and probably reinstated over on the Twitter sphere. But in relation to his non-condonance of the paedophilia and his lack of action being taken against the Guardian, he posited that he's not a rich man and that he couldn't afford a legal claim. But as Niall pointed out, and fair play to Niall, that he didn't take up the accusation, or he didn't bring charges, or didn't sue for litigation against, even to this day, even considering that it was out there. Yeah, he was, I agree, John, he wasn't bad. But there is no statute on limitations. He asserted that there's a 3-year limit on a 3-year limit on statute of limitations, but there is not. It's unlimited. It's open in regards to child sexual abuse, and I believe of the United Kingdom. And I am open for correction, but I did look into it last night, and it is still open. So he could still change, and he would have to clarify his position on his intention, or indeed to prove that they were taken out of context. And to say that they'd said that they'd made a mistake and that it was, and I was prepared to accept that. Your whole reputation for the rest of your life, you're going to carry that axe on your back because of their mistake without suing for some right of redress. Smacks of inconsistency at the very beginning. The vast majority, but he also said that the vast majority of people believe that the education in the United Kingdom, as it stands, is favourable to the majority of people in the United Kingdom. I beg to differ. I see the Muslim community all over the trial areas where this education was trialed and rolled out. All the Muslim families, parents and fathers said, no way, they're not having it. So they have absolutely object to it outright. He also said, Niall also said that he would see that the rights of some parents would have absolutely no truck with their children having this sexual education, and believe that they have the right to withdraw their children. He said then, well, we have the right not to, we teach them, we don't teach them racism, we should not teach them about homophobia. But all his language, all Tatchell's language is framed about protection. Like, never quantifies. He says, I'm totally against child abuse. What's your thoughts on paedophilia? What is your thoughts on paedophilia? How do you describe it? Child abuse is one thing. And then in regards to the consent, this is the big elephant, or as this article that I will read out to you, this is the Trojan horse in the room being pushed out of consent. Everything is framed around safety and understanding, but consent is the key word where it is. It leads open for, not for prosecution, but for defense, for a legal defense, for anybody perpetrating a child rape. If they can convince a jury or convince their legal peers that there was consent, or by the fact that the child or the underage or the victim did not consent, or did not give consent by not saying no in any way, shape or form, then there will automatically be a defense and there will be an acquittal. And that would leave this whole thing wide open to interpretation time and time again. The state puts a mandatory legal age for consent at 16. I would raise it even further myself, but that's myself. There's a great many things that I would do about this whole situation. Many people would find it abhorrent, and it would be illegal about this. Some of the suggestions, I cannot say them, but I can think them. And that's the thought process that we also have to be careful in regards to the discussion, in regards to the paedophilia context, because it is a thought. And thoughts, as far as I'm concerned, are still not illegal. If you act on them and you break the crime, yes, there is a crime committed. What we must be careful of is not to censor thoughts. That is the tricky part in all of this here as well. I would indeed raise the consent bar, and that's coming from Rogue Z, our youngest member of our family here, 16 or 17, and he even brings it up to raising the level of the bar of consent, but reframing it in terms of safety and protection of the child. He never quantifies his abhorrence. He says he's against child abuse in all shapes or form. he said that it's hard in the statement that he was taken out of context, that it's hard not to condone pedophilia. And he often uses that same trope time and time again, that his 50-year-old friend who is now dead had a sexual relationship at the 9 years of age, and that he said it did him no harm and he didn't feel anything about it. So that's the conflation there. But many abuse victims, even while they say that it was not consensual in any way, shape, or form, it's still child abuse. Whether in their minds they imagine it being pleasurable or not being any consequence to them, it has done them untold damage. He often cites as well, saying that what was it? He said there's a great majority of his friends had pleasurable experiences, I would say, not to be too coarse, of a morning at 9 and 13 years of age. But you cannot consent as a child because you don't understand the concept, nor should you understand the concept. Any interference or any sexual contact in any way, shape, or form is completely outlawed. It should not be spoken about in any way, shape, or form. Hi, Ron, should I use the link in the live chat? Yeah, anybody's welcome to come in, Casey. Anybody wants to come in and use the link, jump in and come in and say hello. There is a bit of a queue. Won't be till the bottom half of the hour, so you could be sitting there for a while. But I encourage you, I'll throw the link out again. I want you to come back in and have your say. Students have shown that there's a vast number of men where, there's also studies. He said there's a vast array of studies that show that the sexual... I'm after misleading that point, but I would say that there are studies out there that show a great number of homosexual men have been abused in their youth, and while they might think that it was a pleasurable experience or anything like that, the law is there to protect people against predators in all shapes or forms. And he often cites and uses the phrase that history changes the form of consent, and that it's fluid, that it changes from time to time. He often goes backwards to medieval times, saying when kings or princes and knights married their wives at 14 or 13, that for that very same reason, we don't go back to them times. We look ahead because we now understand that it is abuse, and it is psychological and physical abuse. Hence, we set the targets. Now, they're often calling for the reduction to 14 years of age. He, I believe, has said that the age should be brought down to 14. In one of his earlier interactions in the UK, when they were first proponing it, they wanted to bring it down to 9 or 12 in some shape or forms. But that was all conflated, and it's all being thrown up in the air. It is a difficult subject, but by association, even with a person as contentious, and to say that you did not understand or know anything about his contentious past, as a minister, you should be separating, should be far in distance. To say and believe that I just thought he was an LGBTQ activist, and we'll touch on that now in a second, LGBTQ, because he cites it time and time again. Many people will say LGBT and finish it there, or LGBT plus, and leave the acronym wide open. But Thatchell often says it time and time again, LGBTQ plus. Q is queer. Q is queer theory, and Q in queer theory, as we will discuss in the next article, wants to break societal norms in sexual endeavors, and that includes pedophilia. So this is where the Trojan horse of him saying that he constantly says, I'm against child abuse. Of course he is, but he doesn't quantify what his understanding is of pedophilia or what level, or he was never asked what he would say, or why does he campaign for the age to be brought down to 14. That was never brought up. So in some parts, Niall gave him a crack at the whip, but he was too pleasant with him, too easy on him, and didn't give him enough. I would open the invitation for Thatchell to come onto this platform here as well, but I would also open and include that invitation to be a debate, and to be a debate with my good friend, Dr. Bruce Scott. I'd be well open to facilitating that. But he's very well versed in media. I think Niall could have gone a lot harder. I think his research team were very weak, Niall's research team, because they used pretty much everything that was out on Twitter without actually going in and reading and understanding what he's advocating for as part of the LGBTQ philosophy, which is queer theory. And that is the nebulous line. But there was as I said to you, there was a letter read out, or there was a letter sent to the National Party, and we'll read through this letter as well. Many professional people have a cause of concern, regardless of the intricacies, just by the association. This was sent to the National Party's website, and they produced it. Open letter to the members of the Oireachtas, Éire concerning the Minister for Children, from the Law Library, 4 Courts, Dublin, Monday, the 6th of July, 2020. Dear Deputy, I write to you with a heavy heart. What follows in this letter is something that causes me acute distress. To be frank, I find it difficult to take on board what has become of my beloved country. I no longer recognise it. More particularly in this letter, I refer to developments of a political nature. I see that Dr. Roderick O'Gorman, some would say Roger O'Connor, keep an eye out for that on Facebook. Anyway, Dr. Roderick O'Gorman has recently become the Minister for Children, Disability, Equality and Integration. This seems very strange to me. Dr. O'Gorman presents himself as a gay person, and that is very much his own business. There is a dimension to this, however, that of a legitimate public interest and concern. Dr. O'Gorman included a photograph in his Twitter account in 2018 that related to a gay pride event. Those featured most directly in that photograph are Dr. O'Gorman, Mr. Peter Tatchell, and an unnamed lady. The difficulty here as follows. Mr. Tatchell, as in addition to being a gay activist, called for the age of consent in the UK to be reduced to 14 years. That is concerning. Mr. Tatchell, in his public utterances, states that he does not condone adults having sex with children. This was not always his position. Now, he refers back here to this letter. In 1997, he wrote a letter to the Guardian newspaper defending an academic book about boy love and called the work courageous. He also wrote the following in the same piece, and this is where he said in the piece last night that was not brought up for correction, and he has since not corrected the Guardian paper. Even as Niall said, he could still bring litigation. That litigation is still open. There is no statute of limits on child abuse in the United Kingdom. Quote, the positive nature of some child-adult sexual relationship is not confined to non-Western cultures. Several of my friends, gay and straight, male and female, had sex with adults from the ages of 9 to 13. That's where I say to you again, that is still abuse. Just because the abused doesn't understand or sees it as a pleasurable experience when they look back in inflection. Many homosexual men have been abused, up to a great majority of them, tests have shown, and has led on to them to maintaining that lifestyle because of that abuse. And that is why the statute is there and put in place that and should be prosecuted. And those people, even though they admit to that, have still suffered abuse. It's for the protection of all children. Whether these people said that it was consensual and that they enjoyed it, that is still abuse. And that is there for the protection of all children against predators. None feel they were abused. All say it was their conscious choice and gave them great joy. While it may be impossible to condone pedophilia, this is the word. Excuse me, bit of coffee. It is time society acknowledged the truth that not all sex involving children is unwanted, abusive, and horrible, end quote. Now, he says that was edited, that was not his intention, and that is not the way he states it. But as yet, he still has not corrected the record. And for him to say, and as he said, that he is not a rich man and couldn't afford litigation, as many as our live chat members have said there, again, that would be pro bono. That is a lockdown case if indeed those words were taken out of context or printed incorrectly. Mr. Tatchell wrote an obituary in The Independent, the London newspaper, for the Paedophile Information Exchange founder Ian Dunn. Now, he made a whole raft of excuses as to understand why he was tricked and put into saying that. But regardless, he still went through it. I don't think I would commit to doing anything or writing an article without understanding or seeing the final draft before publication. He would have seen that and it would have been publicized before, with his consent. And you have noted, and you've also said that Bruce also points you to the chapters after his that are included in that book, although Niall did say I wouldn't agree with any of them as well. Mr. Tatchell is, for someone of a reflective nature, an altogether perplexing being. I humbly submit to you that he is an unsuitable person for anyone to have associations with. It is particularly concerning that Dr. O'Gorman, as someone already in public life, should have agreed to a photo of himself alongside Mr. Tatchell. It is even more concerning that Dr. O'Gorman then chose to showcase the photo in his Twitter account. It was, at a minimum, a monumental error of judgment on his part. For those who wish to be harsh, a far darker interpretation of the event might be employed. Now, I could take you down and I could say to you, even the tweet map porn that he tweets out there, that to me is riddled with inversion or slight thoughts. That to me is riddled with inference into the code word, as I showed you, of the FBI, and it also brings into word minor attracted people. That is commonly known in the LGBTQ circles, that they are now moving to ascribe that as a sexual orientation, or that is an affliction, that these people shouldn't be chastised or castigated in any way, shape, or form because they are MAPs, M-A-P. Now, for him to say that he has never heard of that vernacular or doesn't understand that terminology, then I beg to differ with you, because that is very well known in the LGBTQ societies what that means and what it meant. So he could take it as either being mapped from the FBI record, which is in relation to semen, or map in relation to minor attracted people. Both inferences, or he could just say that he was an orthophile, someone who was particularly interested in maps. But I don't believe that, and I don't believe you believe that. Live chat, do you believe that for one instance, that he didn't understand the inference of what he was suggesting in that tweet that he made? And to finish the letter as well, and I really think that Dr. O'Gorman should now resign. I consider him unsuitable for the office of Minister for Children. In any event, I see it as a duty of all members of the Oireachtas now to earnestly and persistently request him to do so. The Irish nation is in the great majority of cases care about their children. Cruelty to children fills us with righteous anger. As a people, we may be flawed, but we are not, in most instances, evil. Children have constitutional rights in this jurisdiction. Ireland is, moreover, a signatory of the international treaties regarding the protection of children. Most of us do care. Let us act on our principles. Yours very truly, Edmund Shanahan, PhD, BL, barrister at law. No, absolutely. I see that there in live chat. Yeah, not a chance. Absolutely, he understands the references. So, I mean, with the government fully behind him, cartographer. Yeah, the cartographer is there, Van Malone, but there is another for it. It's a cartophile as well. I made that on the previous video drop that I did during the week. Let me drop that down, or let me bring that there to the fore. So I did make that presentation there. So he does understand the inference. It's not unwarranted to say that it was innocent for what he was saying. The statute of limitations is open. I do not condone child abuse unless the child consents. This is where I am leading. This is my charge, and this is my opposition to Thatcher primarily, and to calling for the resignation of O'Gorman because of the inferences of what he said on his Twitter post. But to understand the LGBT, the Q, the queer theory, and this is where we're gonna jump into now in this next article, and this is where we're gonna probably face more censorship, because I've read something like this previous from Dr. Bruce Scott, and the video was removed. So I encourage you to download this straight away, or search for it on BitChute if it is taken down. And I'll encourage you to go look at the analytics, and you can see the amount of demonetization of all our videos are being challenged and being quashed. Demonetization is harsh, and they are defunding the platform slowly but surely, but throttling it. I know a great many of you are not getting your notifications. So please share these videos on your platforms, or push them out. It's important. It encourages people to check in and check out the show. I can see a number of new faces in the live chat. You're very welcome. We really appreciate your support, as we do over on Facebook. We see a number of you in the chat over on Facebook too, and a few over there on Periscope. But we are broadcasting on multiple platforms. So I want to jump into this next article as well, in relation to the queer theory and the Trojan horse that is queer theory, that many people in this country will not delve in and do their investigation. They don't have the time to delve into it and to understand it. But I read these articles out, and I drop these out to bring some people to up to date to why our opposition to the likes of Thatcher and Dr. Eddie McCabe, whatever her name is, that these tactics that they use to make it as difficult, or to shame parents that want to remove their children or do not want their children taught this new ethos, as I've read it out, the sexual education that's being promoted from the UN through the World Health Organization and down being transferred to European states as a standard for all global citizens. And if you follow yesterday's resource tool, those 6 videos there are there for resource, but every one of those videos has the link to the full PDF, and I encourage you, if you get the chance, to download it and read through it. It's a heavy bit of research, but it shows you the direct connection between 2030, the new sexual education, and the blanket laws that they want to enforce for the global citizenry and global citizenship. But not to belay the point too much, not to go over too much. We'll get through this article. I think it's very important for a majority of you, most of you, but the casual viewer afterwards. And I shout out to Padraig and Irish Wolf, Pat Flanagan, Padraig Wolf. You're always in the comment section down below, and I know you'll be watching there as well. If you want to cut segments out of any of my work here, you have my full permission and to upload them onto your channel and take the segments as you do for the news articles as well. So just that's out there. We'll go through this letter together, or this article together, live chat, and then we will crack on and we will see each other on Saturday, because this isn't going away quite easily. But what I want many people to understand is the queer theory element of the LGBTQ. The Q is the queer theory, but the plus sign as well, the acronym, the plus sign, is also very nefarious. It opens the door to a whole range of things that are yet to come down the pipeline that will be taught mandatorily in the curriculum when it's upgraded, because people will not be paying attention. The Trojan Horse Unicorn, Queer Theory and Pedophilia, Part 1. Queer theory is based on an interpretation of power which claims that children can consent to sex with adults. Dr. M investigates. There's a couple of leading Twitter accounts, and it's mostly focused on queer feminism. My first essay about Mina Loy and what she means to me as a queer feminist, the poet, has been published on the Pussy at PVSSY Magic. Check it out and learn more about the badass modernist woman. And again, it's in and around the queer feminist experience. A couple of different Twitter accounts pushing out and talking about, like, the Queer Feminist Film Festival, and the Pride Shelter Trust talking about, please attend the Queer Film Feminist Festival 24th of May. But let's get into this. Introduction. When I see the term queer feminist or queer feminism, I suspect, maybe hope, that those who use these descriptors have not done the reading. As the old proverb states, quote, "The road to hell is lined with good intentions." I do not believe that all these young woke people, charities, institutions, and art festivals are supportive of rape and pedophilia, of queering and transgressing boundaries feminists have worked tirelessly to establish. Nevertheless, this is what queer theory aims at. As Sarah Beresford has analysed, the term queer is by definition whatever is at odds with the normal, the legitimate, and the dominant, and aims to destabilize dominant ideas of identity, whether that identity is sexual, gendered, ethnic, national, and political, and so forth. This sounds liberating and progressive until we remember that the normal, the legitimate, and the dominant include the idea that adults should not sexually abuse children. Unnervingly, the free framing of child sexual abuse and liberating of pedophilia from the margins of society is a dominant idea within queer theory. Although it has attempted to cloak itself under the rainbow and harness the energy, the goodwill and gains gay, lesbian, and bisexual people have fought for over decades, queer theory is anything but progressive. Indeed, it is totally opposed to same-sex attraction. As Professor Alessandra Tennessini outlines, a characteristic trait of queer theory is its opposition to any view that treats sexual orientation as anything other than socially constructed. Thus, same-sex attraction becomes a preference which can be unlearned or cast as bigoted for being exclusionary. This is homophobia in a shiny new case. Unlike transgender ideology, which is underpinned by queer theory has key proponents and a body of literature which we may interrogate. This series of essays will first look at the postmodern foundations before moving on to queer theory and pedophilia. Postmodernist underpinning of queer theory. Queer theory was built on the philosophical traditions known as post-structuralism and postmodernism. Michael Foucault was the founding father of this way of the conceptualizing reality and the human condition. Tanzim Spargo has claimed that Foucault's analysis of the interrelationships of knowledge, power, and sexuality was the most important intellectual catalyst of queer theory. Similarly, Margaret A. McLaren has asserted that Foucault's work has been foundational to queer theory. Foucault advanced the idea that power is relational and ubiquitous. Rather than being dictated from above and unilateral, Foucault claimed that power and prohibition was movable and pervasive, being constructed through discourse. As Jane Clare Jones has explained, Foucault suggested that discursive regimes, as regimes of power and knowledge, produce the subjects they purport to describe. In practice, this means that harm of rape, for example, is now we discursively construct a victim and an offender rather than the physical act of rape itself. Furthermore, Foucault posited that the notion that fundamental or real structures underpinned events or materials such as texts was a fallacy. Foucault's reconceptualization of the triad of discourse, power, and knowledge entailed a rethinking of resistance. Transgression of norms, and in particular sexual norms, became the only response to punishment and classification, which would, in Foucauldian thinking, challenge oppression and power. Although Foucault's challenge to heteronormative dominance was a welcomed intervention, the extension of his idea that all norms are bad and freeing repressed deviant sexualities is good in of itself poses serious problems. This is where we're going with the queer theory underlying and trying to normalize pedophilia and excuse rape, in essence. Feminists have attempted to develop the cultural norm that rape is bad and that children cannot consent to sexual activity. These activities, rape and child sexual abuse, become reframed in postmodernism and therefore queer theory as repressed and a transgression of boundaries, which is thus challenging power and helping to liberate the individual. For example, Foucault presented the prosecution of a child molester as a petty collective intolerance, where the discourse constructs an offender and victim and enacts the state power on an individual. Foucault related how, one day in 1867, a farmhand from the village of La Courte, who was somewhat simple-minded, employed here and there, then and there, depending on the season, living hand to mouth from a little charity or in exchange for the worst sort of labour, sleeping in barns and stables, was turned in to the authorities. At the border of a field, he had obtained a few caresses from a little girl, just as he had done before and seen done by the village urchins around about him. For at the edge of the wood or in the ditch by the loading leading to St. Nicholas, they would play the familiar game called curdled milk. So he was pointed out by the girl's parents to the mayor of the village, reported by the mayor to the gendarmes, led by the gendarmes to the judge, who indicted him and turned him over first to a doctor, then to two other experts, who not only wrote their report, but also had it published. What is the significant thing about this story? The pettiness of it all. The fact that this everyday occurrence in life of village sexuality, these inconsequential bucolic pleasures, could become from a certain time the object of not only of a collective intolerance, but of a judicial action, a medieval intervention, a careful clinical examination, and an entire theoretical elaboration. The harm in this scenario, according to Foucault, was that the authoritarian investigation, which forced the village half-wit to speak about giving a few pennies to the little girls for favours the older ones refused them. J.C. Jones provides further information of Foucault's treatment of this incident of child sexual abuse. She details how, with the publication of Abnormal in 1974 and 75, lectures at the Collège de France, we now know that Foucault's treatment of the case in this history of sexuality was not his first. On this occasion, he gives more detail about the obtained caresses than he was willing to put into print, while nonetheless retaining his stance of steadfast obfuscation and assuring his audience that the matter, you will see, is extremely banal. The farmhand named amusingly Foucault's images Joie, was, we learn, denounced by the parents of a little girl he had almost partly or more or less raped. The assault occurred on the day of the village festival, when Joy dragged young Sophie Adams, unless it was Sophie Adams who dragged Charles Joy into the ditch alongside the road to Nancy. There, something happened, almost rape perhaps, but this is nothing to trouble ourselves about. Joy, you will be reassured, very decently gives 4 sous to the little girl, who entirely unperturbed immediately returns to the fair to buy some roast almonds. And the qualification of that story is that they deconstructed it so that it was merely the act, and they spoke about the act, not the rape itself, or indeed the thing. But sexual violence and child abuse are extremely banal for Foucault. He presents the giving of money as purchasing the child's consent after the act, and thus changing the reality of the event. That's the crux of it. And that transfers over to Epstein and what's going on in the United States with Epstein, with the initial prosecutors saying that he procured prostitutes, underage prostitutes. You can see how they changed the language. The language to infer that the girls were nothing more than prostitutes by saying that he procured underage prostitutes. This is the deconstruction. This is where the change in the use of language is careful. And as Foucault says, the sexual violence and the child abuse are extremely banal. They break it down into postmodernist terms. He presents the giving of money as purchasing the child's consent after the act, thus changing the reality of the event. This is where I say the nebulous act, or the inference that the way they are trying to bring the LGBTQ, the Q is the Trojan horse. Nobody has a problem with lesbians. Nobody has a problem with bisexuals. Nobody has problems with gays. I would have some questioning over the T, the transgenderism, because that is the first fault line. But again, that is based on queer theory. The notion that changing the discourse changes the experience and truth is particularly useful for queer theory, which promotes men's sexual rights and paedophilia. Despite the supposed banality of an adult sexual activity with children, Foucault remained concerned with age of consent legislation. Even though he, like I said to you, paedophilia, the thought experiment, these are ideas and vehicles that can be used in a university context among young adults, not young children. These are philosophies and ideas that can be toyed with as means of expression in the philosophical sense. But when you transmute them down to the children and bring them down to the primary school, and even so far march on down to the Montessori's, where do we stop when everything can be equated to not the sexual act? Despite the supposed banality of the adult sexual activity with the children, Foucault remained concerned with the age of consent legislation. In 1977, Foucault signed a petition to the French Parliament arguing for the abolition of all legislation regarding the age of consent, the effective legalization of paedophilia. In 1978, Foucault participated in a radio broadcast which once again argued that the age of consent legislation should be abolished, and that children's sexuality and supposed desire for sex with adults should be acknowledged. Published as The Danger of Child Sexuality, an interview with Michel Foucault, following Foucault's introduction, Guy Hoche, I can't pronounce that name, sums up the position of the 3 male thinkers. 6 months ago, we launched a petition demanding the abrogation of a number of articles in the law, in particular those concerning relations between and decriminalizing relations between adults and minors below the age of 15. A lot of people signed it. People belong to a wide range of political positions. There we have a justification for the legalization of pedophilia based on its supposed popularity. This radio broadcast also included a startling defense of videos of child sexual abuse. I'm going to have a go. Hoke Kwekinem argued that when someone says that child pornography is the most terrible of present scandals, one cannot but be struck by the disproportion between this, child pornography, which is not even prostitution, and everything what is happening in the world today, what the black population has to put up with in the United States, for instance. Yes, in this radio broadcast of a conversation between Foucault and 2 of his contemporaries, it is being argued that because black people suffer racism, and this is the analogy that Thatcher made, that in racism being equated to homophobia. Sorry, let me bring that up. Yes, in this radio broadcast of a conversation between Foucault and two of his contemporaries, it is being argued that because black people suffer from racism in America, that the sexual abuse of children should be filmed and distributed. The mind boggles. Foucault responded that the child, with his own sexuality, may have desired that adult. He may even have consented. He may even have made the first moves. We may even agree that it was he who seduced the adult and claimed that legislation regarding the relations between child and adult sexuality were extremely questionable. That is the founding father of postmodernism and the underpinnings of queer theory. Hokian continued the conversation, alleging that there is a whole mixture of notions that makes it possible to fabricate this notion of crime or offense against decency, which comprises both the religious prohibitions concerning sodomy and the complete new notions to which Michael Foucault has just referred, about what people think they know of the total differences between the world of the child and the world of the adult. But today's overall tendency is indisputably not only to fabricate a type of crime that is quite simply the erotic or sensual relationship between a child and an adult. Yes, these men publicly argue that adults penetrating children is a fabricated crime because people are ignorant and arrogant in asserting the separation of the world and understanding of a child and an adult. One presumes that their next campaign is for child prime ministers, child intellectuals, and if they need medical care, they will allow a child to perform it. When sexual abusers make the argument that children can understand and enjoy sex with adults, they never carry it over to other aspects of life. See you there in the background, Casey, don't worry, I'll bring you in shortly. This notion of child consent and child focus on activities regarding their genitals is something we see carried over by queer theory in the concept of the transgender child. With such an intellectual pedigree, is it any wonder that alarm bells are ringing? The third speaker, Jean Danet, offers the more theorizing on consent and pedophilia. Danet made the case that when we say that the problem of consent is quite central in matters concerned with pedophilia, we are not saying that consent is always there. But, and this is where one may separate the attitude of the law with regard to rape and with regard to pedophilia. In the case of rape, judges consider that there is a presumption of consent on the part of the woman and that the opposite has to be demonstrated. Whereas with pedophilia is concerned, it is concerned that there is a presumption of non-consent, a presumption of violence. Even in a case where no charge of an indecent act with violence has been made, that is with consenting pleasure, because it is to be said that the act without violence is the repressive legal translation of consenting pleasure. It's pretty clear how the system of proof is manipulated in an opposite way in the case of rape of women and in the case of indecent assault on a minor. And again, I draw your attention to the hate speech laws when they reverse the law on the presumption of innocence to the presumption of guilt. Would that have an effect in a court of law? Would that have an effect in a court of law in regards to a minor consenting to having sex with an adult? That is the big conflation, and that is not what is being spoken about, and that is why we are deprived of discourse in our mainstream media. We do not get these conversations because people are too afraid and abhorred to even approach the subject. But we are talking about ideas and concepts. But when they further broach into the realms of legality and into our political sphere, where they're being pushed into our sexual education, then we have every right to push back and say that we do not consent to this. We do not allow our child, and we want to question this whole rollout. Don't forget, it takes 10 TDs to bring this legislation to be discussed in the Oireachtas. And this was never discussed in the Oireachtas. Only two people brought it up, as Melissa O'Neill brings forward. So this is being ramped up and brought forward without discussion. And everybody that's involved in pushing it, they are all on board with it because they've all got a stake in it. They're all going to make money off it. And it's not for the protection of children. This is about when other bad actors like Thatchell come into play and use their cover as an LGBT activist. But when he keeps pushing the queer theory, this is the queer theory that he purports to support. And that is the transgression of normality and heteronormativity that Bruce Scott speaks about. There is some mighty projection occurring with the notion of consenting pleasure. The two are incomparable. Women have the adult faculties and the understanding to engage in a sexual activity. Children do not. Foucault was clear that an age barrier laid down by law does not have much sense. Again, the child may be trusted to say whether or not he was subjected to violence. Foucault adds his opinion that to assume that a child is incapable of explaining what happened and was incapable of giving his consent are two abuses that are intolerable, quite unacceptable. There it is, the father of postmodernism and the grandfather of queer theory, declaring that the idea that a child cannot consent to sexual activity with a child, cannot sanction their own abuse, is intolerable and unacceptable. Let me bring this up. How are thinkers proposing such ideas lauded as philosophical geniuses? This reframing of the unacceptable and the notion that language supersedes reality was the mantle which queer theory was picked up. So that's what I'm saying there. These highfalutin conversations, this reframing of the unacceptable, which is pedophilia, and the notion that language supersedes reality is the mantle on which queer theory is picked up. So it's the use of language. What I've always said to you in all discussions, and well I've ever said, is the correct use of language. That's why if you speak willy-nilly on your Facebook and social media profiles, don't forget the internet never forgets. And your slight, even in humor or witticism, can be taken out of context and used against you. As my good friend in Coolock is now seeing, that a slight use of misplaining of a word in a humorous sense has been taken out of control and taken out of context, and he is now being chased. And this is the idea where the left will use this throwaway mark, and they will gather like hounds to attack and to vilify that one person with threats of their family. Let's bring Casey in now. Casey, we'll get your thoughts, Casey. I know that was a bit long-winded, but you understand the idea, the creation with the use of language, the way they're trying to frame it, with what is in essence reality.
Oh yes, it's quite shocking actually, the whole material that you've been presenting yesterday, and also that last piece. It is beyond comprehension. I will be trying to get tomorrow to the protest, definitely, because I think it's very important. And the problem is that we need to fight this whole idea of that kind of education, because even if, as you suggested, we could, for instance, withdraw the children from those classes, the problem is that they are still in the class with the kids that will stay at this particular education piece, and they will be, of course, exchanging ideas and stuff. So the fact that even someone takes the child out of that part of education, it's not really making that huge impact, because kids are still learning together on all the rest of the day, and they talk to each other. So once this thing is in the schools, there's no way to escape it, essentially, this way or another. And that's a huge issue. And of course, like reasonable education on the subject is needed at some stage, but way later. And of course, it needs to be probably tailored, in a different way. The stuff that they are introducing right now, according to the WHO standards and propositions, is seriously crazy stuff, and nobody really reasonable can possibly, as a parent, agree to this. And it's just yes.
I was just saying, Casey, we haven't been given, like on the Twitter and the social media, all those bodies that represent and are getting involved, and they tweet out their virtue, and it's a great and it's an important discussion, and we're delighted to be involved in this. We're delighted to be involved in that. Meanwhile, parents are out flogging their brains out, 70 hours a week to try and pay the mortgage, pay the bills, keep the gas going, and they don't have that much time to attend to the information that their children are going to be brought up. So it's only scant regard. Yeah. They look to the mainstream like RTE and the talking heads, who they trust implicitly, and their government figures who they trust implicitly without condemnation in any way, shape or form. But when somebody suggests, oh, hang on a minute, can we have a look at this? Because as the philosophy says, it's the reframing of language through queer theory, and it's the Trojan horse, which Peter Tatchell is, and is being used now to give O'Gorman protection. That he's had a couple of radio circles. Minister Gore or Coveney has said that they have dealt with the subject now and that they accept his statement as blanket truth. Meanwhile, parents have to go back to work. We have to contend with a lockdown. We have to worry about what's going to happen next year. But this legislation will roll through unabated because it wasn't even challenged or discussed in the Oireachtas, and it's being pushed by all and sundry because they all have vested interest. And now for the politicians to come out and say that a child under 16 can go and have reconstructive surgery and can effectively have their genitalia removed and inserted without parental consent. I mean, alarm bells should be ringing. That's why it's important to turn out on Saturday, not only to show dissension against O'Gorman, but to show your dissension against the philosophy that we haven't had it properly discussed and we want to reevaluate the whole situation.
Absolutely. And the whole thing is shocking, and it just shows again that the government, unfortunately, and people in power, they just ignore us, ignore the citizens, ignore our will, our opinions, and people should stop trusting government. I think this is still quite an issue here, because I think the Irish nation is very kind of innocent in a way, and the people really want to do the best. And if someone presents them an option or a plan that this is going to be for our good, and even from the past, we remember how organized and kind of we took it on our chest, the whole crisis and austerity and all the rest of it, and really people were not revolting until this water charges appeared. But that was really the only time that I saw a really big dissent and revolt for yet another bill. Other than that, like, people really are trying to do their best, and I think that the fact that we are not questioning the government, this is a huge thing, and I see it in Ireland. I see it also in other countries. I see it in my own country that there is this kind of blind trust. Maybe because people think that certain things are unthinkable, that somebody would be able to do something like that, would be able to actually act against the citizens, try to harm children, because it is unthinkable if you look at it, from kind of an innocent position. And I think that this is the problem, that people have still very hard time to wrap their heads around the fact that the world is run by the money and people in power, and governments at any occasion will be trying to use this power to benefit from the situation, to mislead us for bigger control, obviously. And this is what's happening right now. And that's probably the main issue, that people just cannot bring themselves to believe, and they are in denial. And that's how we have a very hard time to get through to our friends, to our families. I myself are struggling on all the fronts, and I'm just being regarded as an absolutely crazy person with all my views and concerns. So
welcome to my world.
I know, and it's all on all the fronts. It's on the health, on the approach to life, and then now I'm probably being seen again like a bigot or someone like this. And I lost some Facebook, Facebook. Just I was defriended by a few people and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure everybody has a similar story right now who's in the live chat. So
we absolutely.
what can you do?
I'm going to let you go there. Thanks for jumping in and saying speaking out there as well. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Yeah. I said I'll see you tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, Chase, today is Friday, isn't it, Kasia?
Yes, it is.
Tracy,
GT, I fully understand. You had really a hard time yesterday, like the fact that you were actually reading through that stuff half a day, like that takes some guts, because it's, I think, very hard to read that kind of rubbish.
Yeah,
so no, don't worry, we can do it next week. It's fine. I leave some links anyway for people, some kind of info that they can
leave it in the
use,
comment section, and I'll pin it later on today. Apologies about that, case. I completely forgot. We're just so wrapped up in all of this. Go on, I'll let you go because we're running out of time there. Talk to you soon.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
All the best, and see you tomorrow.
God bless. See you tomorrow. Oh well. Got so wrapped up in all of this there, completely forgot it was Friday. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? How weird is that? Well, look, I think it's a perfect time to wrap it up. We'll speak up. This situation, this discussion has not gone away as of yet. We still a lot to discuss on it there as well. We've only just really touched the very top of it there. GT, that's the Alzheimer's. Yeah, well, kicking on 50 now. Got to be watching out for these things, ladies and gentlemen. So look, I will see you later on this evening, and we will be talking with the one and only Fiona Marie Flanagan. We'll have under pressure, Liam. Always under pressure. Under pressure. Don't want to make light of the discussion today, but we keep it light and humorous. Live chat. Let's finish off on a roll call, because I know I haven't been able to squeeze one of them in for a long time. Please, your age, your current disposition, and what ails you. Let people all tuning in around the world know where you are from today, and we will sign off and let you go. And I want to thank you again for your continued support. Again, don't forget, smash that like button and the subscription button, and click the bell. You'll be reminded of future broadcasts here on the Grand Torino. Thank you, and a big continued shout out to all of you supporting. Links in the description of how you can do that. Don't forget to become a member of the Grandstream by clicking on the join button. And thank you for your support over on the Grand Torino website, worldwideweb.ie. Okay, here they come, fast and ready. Enda Thornton is 37 in Galway. The British Reactor is 20. Liz Pepper is in Tala, 52. See you tomorrow on. Noel Fortune is 53 in Holland. The Rogue Z is in Bournemouth and is 16. Great to see you. Gen Z. Alan Aidan Fletcher is 48 Bayside. Michael John Dennis is 49 in Manchester, the United Kingdom. James Collins is 39 years younger. Thomas Coulter is 60 in Down. And a big super chat from Martha. Sorry, Martha, I'll drop that up afterwards if I get a chance. 168 and 295. Don't forget, smash that like button up, please, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Rooney is Margaret Rooney in disguise. She's 53 in Glasgow. Thank you very much, Margaret. Living Soul is 23. Balia Aha Clea. Andrea Murphy is Cork, 30 years of age. Great to see you, Andrea. Noel Kelly is in D7 at 61. See you there, Noel. Maureen O'Leary is 60 in Clonakilty, West Cork. No surrender, no consent. No consent, no surrender. I like it. That's a good one. Hopefully G is watching. I haven't had any conversation with G lately. Probably a bit busy. We've got Ragnar Iron Spear in Ballymoney. Lord Funcusius is 40 in Wales. Jerry Tobin is 53 in Cavan. Tony Close is 67 in Wexford. John Francis is 29. He's based out in Hungary. Eunice, the one and only, is in Zambia. Great to see you, Eunice. We have RH Mother is in Tamlacht. Peace Poppy is in Liverpool at 62, feeling wounded. Terence F88 is in Fermanagh, 31. We've got Stourport, 62 from Stephen Norris. Nick Burns, 65, AAKA. Karen Burns, New Jersey. Okay, Nick. That must be Karen's other half, I presume. Mama Bear is in Dublin. See you tomorrow, Mama Bear. Adrian Walsh is 52 in Athlone. Siobhan Rice, 49 in Newcastle, County Dublin. Liam Fleming is Ballinacarty in West Cork. Greta Munns is 51 in Suffolk in the UK. The last people. We've got Stephen O'Kane's 48 in Ballymoney. RH Mother is I'd say that's Ohio, 46. Witty March is 40 in Drogheda. Great to see you, Whitey. Thanks for joining us. We've got Kenneth Noel Curran, 68 plus in York. Karen and Sheepdog is 49 in East Cork. Zarowski is 36 in Blackrock. Chanel Cesarni is 68 in Indiana. Momo is in County Waterford. Francis B is in County Tipperary. Brenda Cassidy is in sunny Donegal. Beautiful Donegal. Kieran Heelan is 44 in Tipperary. Eamon Thomas, thank you very much. You're fantastic. And there we go. Liam Kelly is Wexford at 45. RC Orr is in the Kingdom. That's Kerry for those of you viewing abroad. Colette Boland is in Cork. Loud, 51 from Claudia Dunn. Great to see you, Claudia. 42 and Bewildered in the Bogland from Dennis Kearney. And John Doy is 60 in Gulcana, That's out there in Alaska, ladies and gentlemen. He's doing a hard shift out in the log cabin. Stefan Ickstad is 62 in Epstein, Germany. Alles klar. Cheers from Lord from Coaches and 3 and 10. That about rounds us up there, ladies and gentlemen. I think we got through that very much. Again, thank you for your very continued support. Keep an eye out to see if this broadcast remains up after I sign it off. And if you don't, please download it. Don't forget, permission is given to Irish Wolf and Padraig Flanagan on your YouTube stations. If you want to section out any bits, you have my permission to use it. And I will see you again later on this evening with the one and only Fiona Marie Flanagan. Ladies and gentlemen, us.